If there's one thing better than being invited to be the Randall preacher once, it's to be invited back. How many of you remember my last sermon here? Oh, bless you. Thank you. You may not remember me, but I remember you and the vitality of this historic congregation making a witness in Toronto. And thank you for inviting me back. Now, your pastor is convening clergy from all around Canada to talk about preaching for the next couple of days, and he's given us a theme, Amazing Grace. Maybe he heard that I was quoted as saying, when Methodists, you don't know Methodists because Canadians kind of killed off Methodists, but it's taking us much longer in the United States, but we're on the way. Anyway, I said Methodists, when they talk about grace, they don't know what they're talking about, which is odd because grace, it's an English translation of the Greek charis, gift. Grace, gift, yeah, grace means that. But unfortunately, somehow the word grace, it became kind of translated into a kind of vague divine disposition, which says to us, oh, I love you just the way you are, promise me you won't change a thing, a kind of sweet, affirmative pat on the head. Well, somebody must have asked Jesus, what is grace? And in response, as Jesus often did, he told a story about grace. Grace as a name for who God is and a name for what God is up to in this world. Jesus said, it's grace, well, it's like a farmer that had some grapes to be harvested in his vineyard. And so the farmer goes out early morning and he sees some people idle in the marketplace and he says to them, hey, come work for me in my farm. I'll pay you what's right. Okay, and they say, yeah, and they go to work. And you think that would kind of be the end of the story. Transaction accomplished. But no, we're kind of surprised. Mid-morning, he's back downtown. He sees some people who are unemployed. He says to them, come on, go to work for me in my farm. I'll pay you what's right. At noon, he is back downtown, and he says to those standing around, hey, you want a good job? Hey, come to me, work in my vineyard. I'll pay you what's right. At 3 p.m, he is back downtown. He sees some people haven't been hired, and come on, work for me. 1 hour before quitting time, you can imagine who is left downtown 1 hour before quitting time, the people that nobody wants to work in their business. He says, hey, come on, come work in my farm. I'll pay you what's right. End of the day, he calls everybody in. He pays them all the same wage. And Jesus says that's grace. That's God. This story kind of opened up for me in a dormitory Bible study of Matthew's Gospel. And we were at Duke University, and we were working our way through Matthew's Gospel. We got to Matthew 20, and I read the story, just as it's been read to you this morning. And at the end, I said, now, what interests you about this story? And a student spoke up and said, he's never at the farm. And a light came on. Wow, That's amazing. Most of the action in this parable is taken up with these repeated forays back and forth, from the farm downtown, from the farm down. He's never at the farm. What kind of farming is this? This seems like a farmer who is more passionate about employment, a farmer that just won't rest until everybody in town is busy working in the vineyard. He's never at the farm. He's always on the road, back and forth. Wow. And Jesus says that's God. The God that I have come to tell you about, the God that I am with you. Wow, that's a different kind of definition of God than the one I often hear around my place. God is up there, we're down here. God is out there, we're here. God is all good and holy, we're not. God can do anything God wants, but we're limited. God is high and lifted up. And then along comes Jesus, and he tells a story about a God who refused to stay at the vineyard. He's always on the road, out seeking and searching people. It reminds you of some of his other stories. One of his greatest hits, there was a shepherd. He had 100 sheep, and one of the sheep wandered away. And so the shepherd said, well, hey, I'll write it off when tax time comes. It's, just a loss. One. No, the shepherd abandons the 99 sheep back safe in the fold and goes out and beats the bushes until he finds the one sheep. And then when he brings that one sheep back, he says to his friends and neighbors, party with me, let's rejoice. I found that one lost sheep. And they said, well, great. While you were away, about 50 wandered off that you left back in the fold, but glad you're excited about the one lost sheep. And Jesus says, I tell you, heaven just goes wild when you could bring one back in. That's a different definition. God is God up there, out there. God is alleged to be loving and compassionate. God never gets around to actually doing anything loving and compassionate, but out there, we're down here. And Jesus says, no, he's on the road. That's grace. Vineyard. Vineyard is a Bible code word for Israel. Vineyard. Israel repeatedly is said to be God's beloved vineyard. And yet, here's a story which says that God not only delights in the vineyard, but also delights in who the vineyard owner can get into the vineyard. I think that collides with our images of God. God says, hey, they know where I live. They know the office hours. They want to see me. Let them come down here. Let them come to me. 11 o'clock, Sunday morning. That's where I am. They know where I am. No, this is not a story about that. In that same Bible study, at some point, a student asked, why is it that Jesus never seems to do anything important at church. Why is it, what do you mean? He said, well, I mean, he shows up like at the synagogue a couple times. He's at the temple, but mostly the story is he's always outside. He's always on the road. He's always out teaching. He's always out in the field somewhere talking. Why doesn't he want to, you'd think he'd like work up at his house. And I, as someone produced by, employed by the church, said to the student, shut up. I don't even want to think about that question. Stop. The shepherd who seeks and searches and saves. The shepherd doesn't wait for the one little lost sheep come to senses and wander back into the fold. No, it goes out. My own church, United Methodist Church in the States, is in decline. And I heard a Methodist historian talking the other day saying for the first 100 years of American Methodism, the attitude was, we'll come to you. And Methodist circuit riders spread over the western frontier, taking the gospel out into the woods, out as the populace moved westward, establishing orphanages for other people's children, establishing schools for other people's children. We'll come to you. But then the historian said, in the second 100 years, our attitude was, we're going to build some beautiful churches and some great institutions. You come to us. And he said the rest is history. And in a way, this is a story that I think is known by everybody here already, even before you heard Jesus tell it. Because had we the time, I think I could demonstrate that in some way or another, if I ask you, why are you here? And you say, well, we have such a great music program. There's a great choir. It's a beautiful building. I love the preacher. Had we the time, I think I could demonstrate, no, you're here because, in a weird way, you got put here. In some way or another, Almighty God found the time, the energy to go out and get you and bring you here. You think you're here because your preacher said to you last Sunday, look, it takes money to fly in these people from North Carolina to come up here and speak. Now, don't embarrass me. You show up next Sunday. All right? No. Some way or another, God found a way to penetrate your defenses, to call your name, to find out wherever you were secretly hiding, and said, hey, come on, come into the vineyard. I can use somebody like you. The shepherd seeks. I think that collides also with our images of ourselves and our Christian life. Listen to us as we sometimes talk about why we're here. We'll say, since I took Jesus into my heart, since I gave my life to Christ, since I decided to follow Jesus, notice the predominance of the first person, personal pronoun singular there. Notice anything missing there? The active, searching, seeking God. I think the story implies you can't give your life to Christ. He already owns it. You can't Christ is not what you get to after a long, well-informed search of reading and self-discovery and all. No, he discovers you. You don't give your life to him. He takes it. It's a story about that. Thus, a while back, somebody said to me, my son, though he grew up attending your sermons at Duke Chapel, my son, sadly, now that he's become adult, he says he's an atheist. He says he doesn't need the Christian faith. He doesn't believe in God. And I said, fine. That's what you get when you do graduate work at McGill. Fine. But you tell your son, you better keep looking over his shoulder as he goes through life, because we baptized him. And I just believe once Jesus makes a claim on you, he does not like others messing with his stuff. And God's got ways. Let's revise what you said. He's not a Christian yet. That's the way we tell it. She came to me. I didn't really know her that well, but she attended our church sporadically. And she came to me and she basically told me a tale about her life. Her life had just spun out of control, chaos. She told me about the way that she had, so desperate was she for affirmation from others and validation from others, she had allowed others to abuse her, to use her. She had found it difficult to sustain a relationship long before she got left. She had trouble holding down a job. And I said to her, the good thing is you know this isn't right. You want to do better. You want to have a different life. God didn't intend this for you. Look, I think I can help. I have a degree from Yale Divinity School, and I took a class in counseling. So how about, I wouldn't do this for everybody, but I think in your situation, how's Tuesday afternoon for you at 4? Tuesday afternoon at 4, let's decide you'll come here weekly, and we'll talk about a kind of program of self-improvement and to help you and all. Tuesday at 4, how's that for you? Well, okay, I guess, okay. Okay, good. I'll write it down right here. And here's a note to remind you. Well, the next Tuesday came, she didn't show up. So I called her and I said, hey, I was expecting you on Tuesday. And she said, well, some stuff came up. I forgot. And I said, well, write it down. I mean, and now next Tuesday at 4, I said, oh, okay. Next Tuesday at 4, I sit there in my office alone. She didn't show up. So I found out where she lived. I got her apartment number and all. And I went there, and it's one of those apartments, you got to punch in a code to get in and all. So I waited. And about mid-afternoon, various people came and went and all, and I tried to see the code on the get-in apartment, but I couldn't see it. Well, she shows up finally, so she comes in, and I watch her, and just as she gets to the door, she punches in the code, cracks the door open. I rush up, shove that door open, and I said, hey, where were you Tuesday? And she said, the preacher, what are you doing here? And I said, come on, let's get busy. And so I follow her up to her apartment, and I go there and I said, look, put on some coffee, it's going to take a while. And she says, I'm tired after, I've had a big day. And I said, oh, don't give me that. Come on. And I said, and by the way, I don't do this for everybody, but I've brought a suitcase and I'm moving in. And she said, what? Is that necessary for counseling? And I said, it is the kind of counseling you need. Yeah, I'm here. And don't worry about it. You know, I can sleep here on the sofa. I'll be fine. And she said, oh, well, this seems odd. And I said, yeah, it seems odd because maybe I'm the first person you met who really cares and can really help you. And so anyway, what are we having for supper tonight? And so... and you know, I stay there, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and it was real good because she had trouble getting up in the morning. She had a new job, but she couldn't get. Well, I would get her up in the morning and say, "Hey, get dressed, and why don't you put on that blue suit? Come on." And then, but you know, and when she'd go out, I would say to her, "Why are you going out? Who are you going to see?" Well, I got some opinions about the kind of people you're hanging out with, and I want you to. And I said, well, but these are, I said, you don't know who your friends are. I'll tell you who your friends are, and I want to see a list and everything. And and I tell you, it was amazing. She got her life together, and she got on the straight and narrow, and to this day, you know, no problems with the addiction, holding down the job. It's just amazing. And now, I didn't actually do that because, well, a lot of that would be illegal. But here, this is my point. God does. Sorry? If you thought God was, you know, standing off, said, I gave him the 10 Commandments, let him follow that, you know, all right? I've got a beautiful church building down there. Let them show up there, you know, for instruction, and let them hit bottom, and then come to finally to make a decision about the course of their life. No. Jesus says that's not the gracious God we got. It's not just that God is loving toward us. This God is love in action. This God is the seeking, searching, saving, relentless shepherd that's out looking for the lost. That's who this God is. He's always on the road. And that is your hope. Your hope is that this story that Jesus told happens to be true. It's a truthful account of who God is and what God is up to. That is your hope. In life and death, in life beyond death. I was with a man just a couple of weeks ago. He's toward the end of his life. The chemotherapy has not been that effective, and well, I visited with him, and I thought this could be my last visit. I said to him, you know, what are you feeling right now? Are you fearful? Because I think maybe if I were in this situation, I would feel fear at the unknown. And he said to me, no, I don't feel fear. I think I feel more curiosity. I said, really? And he said, I guess it's kind of curiosity on the basis of what I know. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, lying here all these weeks, you know, I've had a lot of time to think back over my life. And I've started thinking about all those times in my life when I wasn't thinking about God. And yet it turns out God was thinking about me. And I think of those times in my life when I was busy minding my own business, life was fine for me, and yet out of nowhere, at the oddest times and places, God just showed up. So looking back, I feel like if God has gone to all that trouble to get me, I just feel like he's not going to let a little thing like my dying stump him. I believe this story that Jesus told is about God. And I believe it's true. And sometimes we get confused into thinking that, like, your faith is something you do. You come to church to get your spiritual assignment for the week. Get out your notepads. All right, church, this week work on your sexism and your racism, and finally buckle down and do some Bible study and pray, and But what if your faith is not something you do, but what God is busy even now doing in you? What if it ain't worship until God gets mixed up into it and enables you to be the person God calls you to be? Well, there's a name for that. It's called grace. But it's grace in action. So we're getting ready to sing, God moves in a mysterious way, His wonders to perform. And how. And by the way, I think your preacher will back me up on this. One of the perks of being a preacher is you get to hear some really kinky stories about God. Lay people will stumble in and will say, I was at this party and it was this break, and said, I don't know if it had anything to do with the party, but I was out in the parking lot, and then it was just like Jesus appeared. And I said, in a parking lot? You'd think you'd have better locations to, what? Only to be told, oh, preacher, remember, a gracious God moves in a mysterious way. And when God, mysterious way, is a way to you, that's called grace.